Inflation apparently is your fault. All this week, perhaps to celebrate Thanksgiving, the media has been on a rampage how the American people are ruining everything, especially the economy. Atlantic magazine, which still exists, piled on publishing a gem called Inflation is Your Fault, arguing that the American people broke the economy despite the best efforts of Washington. Of course, this invited a meme summing up media's disgraceful reporting during the past 2 years of runaway inflation. So first it was denial, the inflation scare, quote unquote, doesn't match reality. Then it was minimization. Inflation looks bad now, but it's sticking to the script. Nothing to see here, folks. It's all under control. Of course, it turned out it was very much not under control, at which point we got why inflation is a good thing, and finally, it's all your fault. That is, the Fed just innocently printed up $6 trillion. At one point, almost $1 in $3 had fresh ink on it. And then the federal government equally innocently spent it all to buy votes, but it is your fault for buying groceries. What got the Atlantic wound up here is that even though prices went up, Americans keep buying stuff. Particularly galling was that Americans spent 7.8% more over the Thanksgiving weekend than last year. Now, I've mentioned in recent videos that this spending is being fueled by credit cards, buying on installment, and increasingly by raiding 401k and retirement accounts. But Atlantic is angry it happened at all. You see, people shouldn't be spending when there's a federal government with hot trillions to pour out all the inflation voters will bear. So what's happening here is cutting spending makes inflation goes down. And roughly half the spending in America is the government. The other half is left for the people. That gives you two choices. You can either cut government spending or you can cut the people's spending. The left, obviously, would prefer to starve the people so the government and its cronies can feast. Now, it's worth pausing to ask what the hell happened to the left, but here we are. So what shall we cut? Always helpful, the Atlantic provides a list: cars, dishwashers, cruises, jewelry. They don't get into groceries and gasoline, which are a big part of that higher spending, because they've got a narrative to sell here. The people are greedy, government needs that money. Now, you might ask why Americans need to tighten their belts, like where did the inflation come from? And the Atlantic is there for you again with the now standard media gaslight. The pandemic did the thing to the supply chains, then it was the amazing job market. Next up was too many amusement park trips. And then people had too much money, then a raft of studies how price sensitivity might be changing, tied off with a philosophical passage about brand loyalty and inertia. 20 excuses, and not one of them has anything to do with the Fed's $6 trillion, nor the government that spent all of that and trillions more buying votes, calming weather gods, and virtue signaling these cities into oblivion. So what's next? Brought to you by Unchained. What's next is as recession meets inflation, the media is in full gaslight mode on the economy. A couple days ago, I mentioned an article calling Americans whiny ingrates for not appreciating Bidenomics. The funny thing is, after 2 years, they still can't decide. Is everything amazing, but we're too dumb to see it? Or, as the Atlantic tells us today, are things bad and it's all our fault? Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.